from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Welcome, everybody, to Talking Catholic. I'm Pete Sanchez with Mike Walsh. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, sir.
We're recording this on a Friday afternoon. It is pretty nice day outside.
Is it? I haven't been out yet.
No,
so,
it feels...
this morning, anyway.
If it's the first day of baseball's back.
I know. I was kind of surprised you scheduled this podcast for this moment right now because in about, 30 minutes ago, the first spring training game of the Phillies started.
Yeah.
That I was listening to on the radio.
Well...
I'm shocked considering what a incredibly huge Phillies fan you are that you would dare run our podcast into a... I figured you would have said, let's podcast at 11 o'clock at night versus 1:30 in the afternoon on the opening game of spring training.
Well, Bryce Harper is still not signed.
So you won't be a fan until Bryce Harper signs?
My enthusiasm, they need to get him. I think...
Wait a second. They have signed so many people. You're going to be upset if they don't get Harper?
Well, this is what happened. So at the beginning of the offseason, the owner, John Middleton, said the Phillies were going to spend, quote, stupid money. And they haven't yet. I think basically they set everybody up to either get either one of the big two or both of the big two, Manny Machado or Bryce Harper. Manny Machado is off the board, having signed $300 million for 10 years with San Diego Padres. So I think a lot of the fan base is going to be very disappointed if they don't get Harper.
I was not going to be disappointed if they didn't get either, and I'll tell you why. Because as you know, I grew up in a biracial family, Yankees fans and Phillies fans. And if there's one thing I have learned being a fan of the New York Yankees, particularly in the modern era, say the last 25 years of free agency, it is that spending a ton of money on one guy does not guarantee championships.
No.
It just doesn't. Now he's 26, Harper that is. Both of them are young, but he's 26. But spending $300 or $400 million on one player, I know it's the opposite of Moneyball to begin with, but on top of everything else, I worry that would be an insane amount of thing, an insane choice.
It's
particularly living in a city like we do, where I know that baseball doesn't have a cap, but you have a team like the Philadelphia Eagles that spends wisely and determines their allocations with great wisdom, and picks up players like that, as opposed to just throwing a chunk of money at, albeit, two very good players.
Well, I think, too, not only you get their value on the field, hopefully, they're both all-stars. They're both very good players. I think as well what would come with Bryce Harper is the ticket sales and merchandise. I think that is huge. I mean, you're going to spend all that money on him, but you're going to recoup a lot, if not all of it. I mean, how many Harper Phillies jerseys you're going to see opening day if he signs is going to be a lot. I mean, there's just going to be a lot.
Well, I always worry about a guy who has a career year in his contract year, which is exactly what Harper had last year. He had a career year and the very final year of his contract, which does not bode well for the next year. So I am concerned about that.
I thought he only batted like 250 or something. I could be wrong. I thought he had a down year. That his defense is a little iffy, but if they go to the designated hitter, which everybody thinks they'll do, there'll be a uniform designated hitter in both leagues soon. That can happen. I don't want it, but the union would not take away how many jobs? They wouldn't take away 30. They wouldn't take away 15 jobs. They would create 15 jobs.
Just remember, you sign Harper now, you can't get Trout next year probably.
No, I think you can. I think that's
With all of your money, we're going to be able to get it.
And Herrera has a strained left hamstring now, or strained hamstring somewhere. One of his legs has a strained hamstring, so he'll be out. I mean, he might have a strained brain for all I know.
That seems vindictive, but
he's
okay.
He's a little loco en la cabeza. Crazy in the head.
Yeah. Casting aspersions so quickly on the podcast.
Well,
that's my job.
Well, I get passionate about the Phillies, Mike.
You do.
And I'm happy.
Well, our apologies to all of our usual Catholic listeners that they had to sit through 5 minutes of baseball talk, but it was important.
Yes, it's not quite opening day, but it sure feels like it. And it's coming up. Also coming up, Mike, we got March 2nd is in Atlantic City, St. Michael's Church, is the first Saturday devotions that the Franciscan Sisters of the Renewal they put on at St. Michael's Church. From 10 to 3 p.m., there is a Mass, a talk talk by a Franciscan friar, adoration, confessions, rosary, music, healing service, and benediction. Just come. No registration is required. It is a great day. I hope to make it March 2nd. Actually, scratch that. I'm sorry, sisters. I know I have another assignment in the diocese that we'll get to shortly, but I will try to be there on the next first Saturday, which will be in April. So come on out this Saturday, March 2nd at 10 a.m. For more information, call 609-343-1545. And again, that is at St. Michael's Church in Atlantic City, New Jersey, 10 North Mississippi Avenue. And Mike, this is neat. We got a youth event coming up called Youth Leader. It's a team approach to Christian leadership formation for youth and young adult leaders, and it integrates Christian spirituality and ministry skills. There'll be a one-day training program that will help youth help them prepare to take leadership of their lives and choices, help them to be leaders in various ministries, and form youth to bring Christian values to all they do and in their leadership roles. This is Saturday, March 2nd at Assumption Regional Catholic School in Galloway. And to participate or to support young leaders in Christian leadership formation through this youth leader program, call Greg Coogan, Director of Youth, Young Adult, and Campus Ministries at 856-583-2908. On Saturday, March 2nd, Youth Leader, that is from 9:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. at Assumption Regional Catholic School in Galloway.
You know, and that's a great event. That's that event. You know, Carrie Janice was talking about that event on our last podcast, and it was retitled this year. It was originally the Youth Congress, and now it's the Youth Leadership. And you know, the Youth Congress itself had always been fantastic, but I really like where they're going in this direction. You know, it kind of reminds me a little bit of what we're working on with the diocesan convocation coming up at the end of the month. Really trying to inspire and enlighten Catholic leaders, and certainly Catholic youth leaders fall into that. Particularly ones that aren't necessarily, paid staff. You know, these are quite literally youth who are leaders in their groups and may really be able to do great work if they themselves continue to be fed and continue to be inspired. So if you haven't already signed up for that, I'd recommend people go to it, or young people go to it.
Yeah, I will be there. I'm excited. It's going to be a great day in Galloway. And also coming up, the Priesthood Discernment Group, which we've talked a lot about. It goes on once a month. It's going to be at Our Lady of Peace Parish in 32 Carroll Avenue in Williamstown, New Jersey, on Sunday, March 3rd at 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. And the Office of Vocations is sponsoring this. To come consider the call. If you are currently a junior, senior in high school, college student, or in the professional world, up to 39, and you're feeling, the possible call to the priesthood, come on out for this event, which will help you discern, and you can pray with others who are also considering the priesthood. It'll just be a wonderful time, and if you're...
And we've had a number of the seminarians and certainly the vocations director on the podcast in the past, and these discernment meetings, they said, really paved the way for them to become comfortable with at least listening to that call that was in the back of their minds that they weren't quite certain of, or they weren't quite comfortable with, but being around like-minded young people, young men who also think that they may have a calling. And that's really what it is at that time. These are discernment meetings. This isn't an opportunity to Shanghai anybody into the priesthood that doesn't really want to be there. This is an opportunity to actually have a conversation, to talk about, what these young men are feeling, and whether or not they really do have a true true call from God to go down this path, which is a long path. It takes 8 years, but it starts with one step. And this is the first step. There are these discernment meetings. So if you know someone in your life who you think may have a calling, or if you yourself have a calling, check it out. I will tell you that Father Michael Romano, who is a vocations director, is the nicest priest you will ever meet. He's a wonderful priest who has really done a great job with the seminarian program. And the seminarians themselves, there's not a bad one in the bunch, right, Pete?
No.
I mean, they're just a wonderful group of guys, just faithful and fun and joyous, and there's always laughing and joking going on. But there's also, seriousness and actually, focusing on their faith. But it's really a good group. And I know in my case, I love being around the seminarians. They're outstanding. And let's face it, the last since I've been here, I think we've ordained 4 priests, and they've all been great.
Yeah, I was hanging out with the seminarian last night, actually, and there was just...
Is that a positive or a negative? For
positive.
Okay, just checking.
It was good. It was Carlo, Santa Teresa.
Okay.
And he's in his pastoral year at St. Andrews in Gibbsboro, and we were hanging out. He's a good friend. I knew him before he entered the seminary, and he's a good guy, and all of them are just awesome. So come on out. This talk on March 3rd, Sunday, March 3rd at Our Lady Peace, Williamstown, will be on the 7 stages of a diligent discernment. And moving on, next event is, this was just announced. I'm excited. St. Joseph's Day, March 9th. Our alma mater, Mike.
St. Joseph's Day, March 9th?
Yeah, St. Joseph's Feast Day.
St. Joseph's
March
Feast
19th.
Day is
March 19th.
Yeah, okay.
March 19th. I misspoke.
Okay.
Our alma mater, St. Joseph's Day, is partnering with the Diocese of Camden for a Theology on Tap. This is coming up. It's going to be co-sponsored by the SJU South Jersey Alumni Chapter and the Diocese of Camden's Youth, Young Adult, and Campus Ministries. And the speaker is going to be Father Dan Joyce, the school's SJU's Executive Director of Mission Programs and St. Joseph's Chief Mission Officer, who will lead a discussion on how we can use the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola to really figure out what's important and prioritize their values, and how to attend to what we really are called to do.
Yeah. Are you going to be able to go to that?
I will be there.
Wait. I mean, are you allowed to be there? It's Theology and Tap for young people. I mean, have you aged out? No, that wasn't a joke. I mean, I'm curious. What is the age range again?
I think, it is for 18, 19s, 20s, and 30-somethings.
Oh, okay.
So I'm still a 30-something, Mike, for a few more years.
Okay, just checking. For some reason, I thought it was like 35. Because I have aged out. I'm only allowed to be there if we're recording a podcast or something like that.
Yeah, you get flagged. You walk in, the little buzzer rings.
No, even as a St. Joe's alumni, I can't go. So.
Well, but it says it doesn't say SJU Young Alumni. It says SJU South Jersey Alumni.
Yeah, but Theology on Tap is for young people.
Yeah.
I don't want to put the hex of an old person on there by showing up.
You put a hex anyway.
Wow, lashing out twice now.
Well,
wow, man.
Watch out, Mike. It's Friday.
It's Angry Pete Day.
It is the Phillies. I'm in a good mood, so watch yourself.
Doesn't sound like it.
I'm ready for baseball. So this is going to be at Tiernanog Kitchen and Irish Pub, 482 East Evesham Road in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Tuesday, March 19th at 7 p.m. from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. I'm excited about that. That sounds really awesome.
Just because you and I are alums.
Or what?
We're alums of St. Joe's.
Alums, yeah, we're Hawks.
See if you can get, see if you can get friend of the podcast and semi-co-host Mary McCusker to go. First of all,
that's an alum.
Well, not only is she an alum, but that's right up her alley.
I think. She
could give the presentation actually, considering all the work she's done with Share the Journey.
That would be interesting. Yeah, I think I'll talk to
push it. See if you can get her to do it.
Well, maybe not that day, but maybe later on.
No. I mean, actually, to attend.
To attend. Okay, I thought
that would be beneficial.
I think that would be beneficial, and she lives right around the corner.
That's what I'm saying.
So, okay, I will do that. And
I know she likes it when we talk about her on the podcast.
I know.
It's one of her favorite things.
Well, so Mary, hope you can make it, and hope you all can make it on March 19th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Mike, I want you to be there. So I think it would be beneficial. Father Dan Joyce for Theology on Tap with SJU. this is neat, Mike. We talked about vocations, the iRace for vocations. Once again, it's March 31st, so lace up your shoes, Mike, and
I lace them.
New Balance.
I only have laced shoes, so I have to lace them up. I don't wear loafers.
Okay. No. You seem to loaf around a lot, but anyway, there's the 8th annual iRace will take place at Washington Lake Park.
Wait, that's 3. I'm counting now. That's 3. It's now
Mike,
3 personal attacks by Pete
There's
Sanchez.
a chalkboard that Mike is putting them on right now.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hear it, but his so the 8th annual iRace for Vocations will be Washington Lake Park, 626 Herfville, Cross Keys Road in Sewell. So come on out, as Mike likes to call it, and I think it's awesome. It's a Catholic jamboree. Really, people
Do you
of
know
all
why
ages.
I call it that?
Why?
Because the person who runs it, John Kalitz, our friend, as well as Father Michael Romano, hate it when it's referred to that way. So I just so the listeners know, every time I use that phrase, I'm doing it to bedevil the two of them. Because they want the last thing they want to do is have this thing turn into a Catholic jamboree, because it's very focused, and I mean it's a 5K. It's really intended for vocations, and and they're very serious about it, even though it's a very fun event. But as I like to, bedevil them, I would like to refer to it as a Catholic jamboree.
So I just got sucked into Mike's trap of.
That's right.
I apologize, Father Romano and John Kalitz.
They're going to come after you.
They are, but I'm going to blame you because I didn't realize you were bedeviling them.
I was trolling them. Yes.
I got pulled into that net. So no, it's a great Catholic event, to pray and promote vocations to the priesthood and religious life. There'll be mass with Bishop Sullivan, and there'll be food, a 5K run, 1 mile walk, and entertainment.
And it's free.
It is free.
It's free, and it may be a little cold since it's about a month earlier than usual this year. So maybe it's a skating, ice skate for vocations. Who knows how things will turn out? But I will say that whatever Father Romano and their steering committee does, they always have outstanding weather. It's always very temperate. It hasn't rained yet any of the times we've been there. And hopefully that'll continue. But the thing that always gets me about iRace is that I just love the fact that there are 1,000 other Catholics hanging around this park.
Yeah.
And, the people who are coming to the park otherwise will see us all gathered together. They get to experience, seeing this enormous Catholic group come out to celebrate Mass publicly, but B, come out for the express reason to be with each other and to promote vocations primarily to the priesthood, but all vocations. And then in addition to that, I don't think we put it in any of the materials so far. We also offer the sacrament of confession while we're there as well. So you get that opportunity, and that's actually the thing that I always get kind of impressed by is ringing the area of the park that we'll be at will be all of these priests saying, performing, the sacrament of reconciliation, or the people that are performing it, out in public. So you can actually, you're far enough away that you can't hear anything, but you can actually see people really opening themselves up to God, and I think that's beautiful. I love that. I love the public nature of iRace. So come out and be inspired to be a Catholic publicly.
I think
be not afraid.
Amen. And you know what, Mike? That is a great segue to our guest today.
Thanks.
So we are coming up on Ash Wednesday, March 6th. And as Mike said, be not afraid. We have book author Gary Zimak. Is that how you say your name, Gary?
That is correct, Pete.
And that Gary Zimak, who I'm holding his new book, Give Up Worry for Lent, 40 Days to Finding Peace in Christ. I've looked through this. I'm very excited. Gary, how are you today?
I am well, thank you. I'm just sitting back listening to the two of you. I'm very entertained.
Oh, good. That's what we shoot for. We shoot for entertainment.
I like the banter.
Thank you.
I like this. Really good show. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on the program.
Thank you.
And so you are looking at you've published many books. You've written a Warrior's Guide to the Bible.
That's right.
Listen to Your Blessed Mother, From Fear to Faith, and Stop Worrying and Start Living. And you also serve as Director of Parish Services at Mary Mother of the Redeemer Catholic Church in North Wales, PA. So just speak a bit about this book. What was the impetus for writing this book?
You know, Pete, thanks for giving me the chance to talk about this because, in general, I have 7 books in total. 4 of them have to do with overcoming anxiety.
Yeah.
With the help of Christ. I am somebody who has struggled with worry for many years, going back to the time when I was 6 or 7 years old. Probably, I worried about my health. I worried about my parents' health. I worried I would get beat up in school. One thing after another. I'm just one of those natural worriers by nature. And this has gone on for many years. I spent 30 years in the software industry. I was very lukewarm as far as my Catholic faith goes. I would go to Mass each week, and that's all I would do. And I lived a life that was really filled with worry and the associated problems. I had stomach issues. I had heart palpitations. I had panic attacks to the point where I was in the emergency room on at least 5 occasions with panic attacks. So I really get what it's like to suffer from worry. And then really to fast forward a number of years, in I'd say late 2004, I started getting a mystery illness. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And being a hypochondriac, I did what hypochondriacs do. I assumed that I was dying. So at that point, guys, you'll appreciate this. I'm sure this isn't the first time you heard this story. At that point, I realized I'm not a good Catholic. I better fix this before I die and have to meet the Lord in person. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. I got to know Jesus really on a personal level. I began to listen to Catholic radio, to go to daily Mass, to read the Bible finally after years and years of ignoring the Bible. And literally what happened is I got to know Jesus on a personal level. And once you get to know Jesus, you fall in love with him. And then at that point, I was inspired to work spreading the gospel in some way. Now, I'm still working in the software industry. I don't have a theology degree. I don't have the background. But this desire was there to serve the Lord. I started doing some Catholic radio. I started doing some blogging. And eventually my name became somewhat well-known in the Catholic world. And I began to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. But it wasn't until I was walking the dog around the block one day that this idea of reaching out to worriers came into my mind. I thought, you know what? The Lord's given me peace. And one thing I didn't add was that my medical problem, nobody ever could figure out what was wrong with me. But I was determined never to go back and never to desert the Lord. I decided to really focus my message toward worriers because this is a captive audience. People who are worried, they want to know about Jesus. They're looking for relief. So that's what I did. One book led to another, and I ended up going into full-time ministry for close to 6 years after a job layoff. You know, sometimes the Lord calls you to get out of the boat. Sometimes he kicks you out of the boat. I was kind of kicked out of the boat. I was the sole provider for my family, but the Lord did provide, and for 6 years I did full-time ministry, writing, speaking around the country. And then last year I took a job, as you said, at Mary Mother of the Redeemer over in North Wales. So I'm working in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia now, living in New Jersey, and still speaking and writing whenever I can.
That I'm curious. In your travels, I am a very bad worrier. I do it all the time, and I've gotten to the point now where I've embraced it. And in my job of dealing with events as well as crisis communications and stuff like that, I have learned to harness the energy of my worry and to keep me from screwing up mostly. Right. However, it does take a great deal of stress on me. As a New Jersey resident, you would know that the New Jersey put out the list of incredibly accused clergy last week. And as in the preparation for that, you can imagine there was quite a bit of worry on my part. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that I thought I was actually being pretty cool about most of it. I was, certainly tenser than usual and perhaps a bit shorter than usual. Right. But I thought I was actually handling things pretty well. And then my wife and I were having a conversation about it on Saturday. And she was, talking about the difficulty she was having with the release of the names and what it had done to her. And then off the cuff, she says, "And Mike, I really didn't like what it was doing to you. I could tell just how much it was hurting you." And I was like, "Wow, I didn't realize that you noticed." Because it got me to thinking when I was looking through your litany of books that is there a positive nature to worry in addition to the negative effects it can do?
Mike, that's a great question. I get asked that all the time. And I would say this. When we look at, there's a couple terms that I need to discuss because sometimes they're used interchangeably, but they really aren't. sometimes we'll look at fear and think fear is a bad thing. Fear is an emotion. It's a passion according to the church. It's not right, not wrong. It's morally neutral. It's not something I can control. So I can't control if I'm afraid. And the response to fear is what really matters. When we encounter fear in our lives, and let's face it, you look through the Bible, you're going to see many, many holy people who were afraid. Moses was afraid. The Blessed Mother was afraid. She was conceived without sin, never committed a sin, but when the angel first encountered her, she was documented in the Bible as being afraid. St. Joseph was afraid, St. Paul. So these people were afraid. But what you do with that fear is what matters. So when we worry, and Mike, I'm sorry for this, I apologize in advance, it's a tough message. When we worry, essentially we're not trusting God because we are consciously choosing to take it upon ourselves. I've got to fix this. It is my problem. What's going to happen if I don't do this or that? What happens if I get sick? What happens, and so on and so forth. So worry is really a useless response to fear. And Jesus was pretty clear about that in the Sermon on the Mount when he said, do not worry. And I think so many times we tune out that message because we don't think it's possible. Yeah. But he really means it. What I would say is concern would be a valid response to fear. Because concern, unlike worry, is being proactive in your position with that list coming out. We can't deny this. This was painful. This is brutal. And you're in a position where you're right in the middle of it, and being ahead of the game, deciding how you're going to proceed, what steps to take, that falls into the realm of concern, I would say. And so that's a good thing. But worry is just saying, what happens if the Lord doesn't take care of me? What if he doesn't give me the grace I need? And unfortunately, I fall victim to that too sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes we just think it's all on us because, sorry, Mike, once again, tough piece of news number 2, those of us who worry, we tend to like to control things.
That's true.
Right? And we like to be in control of what we can control and also of the uncontrollable. Yeah. Now, a bit of good news, and I read this in a survey, I've embraced this. I have heard, I don't know if this is true, that worriers tend to be highly intelligent. Yeah. So I like that one.
Well, right? I don't doubt that at all. I think that survey is outstanding, personally.
But the theory is that we're problem solvers, and we try to look ahead and figure ways to deal with what might happen. Yeah.
I can say that I'm a warrior too, and I'm not just saying that because Jared just said you're highly intelligent. There's a little.
We're all feeling pretty good about ourselves right now.
Yeah, no, there's just I don't know. I have those trouble spots. Yeah. But I think the Bible, how many times? Like 300 times in the Bible, Jesus says, "Be not afraid."
It's rumored that it's about 365, one for every day of the year, more or less, depending on the translation.
Yeah, and I think that is that. But there's that. But there's also people talk about the fear of God, which people should have.
That's a good fear.
That's a good fear in terms of it motivates us to.
Absolutely, that's a gift of the Holy Spirit. Fear of the Lord is a good thing because. It really means a reverence or a love of the Lord, so much so that we don't want to ever offend him. Yeah. It's not like we're afraid he's going to beat us up or hit us over the head. It's a fear of offending him. That is the purest form of fear of the Lord. The other end of the spectrum, the fear of not wanting to go to hell, that gets many of us started. That's not a bad thing. But as you get to know the Lord, I'm sure you guys know, you lose some of that, and you love him, and you don't want to hurt him. You don't want to offend him, so that fear changes. But absolutely, Pete, that's a fear that we should have. That's a very healthy fear. That reminder that he's God, we're not, and we're expected to do certain things in this life.
And I love this book here because it says 40 days, but it's 47. Right. Because it's got one on Sundays too. Because technically, if you don't know this, the 40 days refers to Mondays through Saturdays. Sunday is kind of a day you can, I don't want to say slack off on your Lenten obligation.
No. That's legit. I mean, Sunday is a day of celebration.
That's right.
Yes.
You can't fast on a day of celebration. With Sunday, we celebrate the Lord's resurrection every Sunday.
Yes. So I guess you think.
However, I never knew that until about 5-6 years ago. I think my parents were just trying to get a little extra out of me during Lent.
I'm thinking the same thing. I
gave up a lot of stuff on those Sundays.
So now you can make up for it, Mike. You have all those years of Sunday fasting, right?
That's right. I can bring them back now.
I don't know if it works that way, but
I don't know if the Catholic schools. Yeah, maybe they just didn't teach it.
No,
they didn't do this.
The Sunday thing.
Yeah, but so they're 47. This is just really great. This book has. There's always. It starts off with a thought for the week. Usually from a spiritual, like Saint Teresa, and then there's a Bible reading, reflection, time for contemplation, and then a prayer. So really, this is just a great. I'm excited to use this one. I'm excited to use this when I wake up in the morning. It's good. It's a good resource.
Right. And that's what it was designed for, to be easy to use for people who are busy. First thing in the morning is a great time to use it because I think it starts your day. And that's what I always try to do. And that's one of the reasons that I can live most of my days, just about all of my days, in peace. Now, I have my moments where I slip up, but I am so much more peaceful than I ever was before. I start off by reading a little bit of scripture every day. The daily mass readings is a great way to start. You know, if it's possible to get to daily mass and get that grace from the Eucharist and prayer. You know, I never used to do those things before, and it really has changed my life. And I talk to Jesus all the time. In fact, I was talking to him in the car on the way over. I mean, anymore now, people are talking on their audio devices. It's not a big deal, so they don't think I'm crazy. But I do talk to the Lord all the time, and he really does give me peace.
You know, there's a lot of truth to that. And you know, something that happens, I think, when people do have problems with anxiety and worry is when you're in that moment, that's when it's actually the hardest to break away from it. So for the 2 weeks that I was, well, more than that, but for the length of time that I was working on the release of the list, you know, I fully admit that I was so focused on that and so worried about that I was not focusing on other things, which is why it's good to have structure in your life that you can rely on and know this morning I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to read this, or I'm going to go to this, and starting your day off with that natural thing and doing it as a matter of repetition saves you often when you're in the midst of that worry. And I fully admit that was not something that I was doing or that I prepared myself to do when this was coming down. I was in full crisis mode, and I admit it, you know, trust me, you weren't calling me out on it. Aside from really giving the Merton prayer a good and solid beating several times throughout the as I was doing the preparation, I was not focused the way I should have been. My faith. Not like I wasn't turning away from my faith, nothing like that, but I wasn't allowing my faith to support me in this very dark time, which is a bad habit, I think, that a lot of Catholics face in any of their dark moments, whether you're dealing with a health issue or a personal issue. Yeah.
You know, Mike, it's a process, though, and that's what I always tell people. Don't beat yourself up over it, because just a case in point, I was recently speaking in Southern California in late January. I know, feel sorry for me. It was really hard.
Oh, it must be awful.
The weather was 78. It was a little chilly.
Poor man.
But I was doing a weekend retreat in Southern California, and I spent most of January struggling with bronchitis. I had that thing that people get where they were sick for 5 or 6 weeks. Well, it was brutal. So I'm getting out there, and it felt like it was coming back. So I'm thinking, I've got this weekend retreat. Friday night, I'm lying in bed thinking, I'm starting to cough. What if I start to cough and I can't make it through the weekend? What if I get sick? And it took me a little while before I caught myself, and I started praying and saying, all right, Lord, you can get me over this. It's in your hands, Lord. It's out of my control. And the peace started to come to me. But for a while there, I was lapsing into worry. I still do it.
Yeah.
You know, it is a habit. I'm better than I was. But the one thing I always like to emphasize is I didn't do this. I don't give myself the peace. It's not like I just overcame my tendency to worry. The Lord helps me.
Yeah.
He helps me every day. And the Holy Spirit helps me to remember more now to turn to Him for help than in the past. So now I don't panic. There's less time spent panicking and more time spent praying.
Yeah, yeah.
But it takes a while. It's a habit. We're used to doing this. We're used to worrying. We almost think like it's accomplishing something.
And you've written how many books now?
I've written 7 now. This
7
is the
books,
7th.
and you still falter from time to time.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I try to be very transparent when I speak because I want people to know that it's a struggle.
Yeah.
But it is possible to live in peace.
Yeah.
You could drive people crazy, too. My wife still, sometimes when there's a situation where I should be panicking, she'll say, why aren't you panicking? Don't you care? But it's frustrating to other people when they expect you to panic. It's not that I don't care, but it's that I've learned with the Lord's help, once I've done everything I can, well, then it's time to trust him.
Yeah.
It's hard, but that's what he wants.
Yeah, it is very difficult. And I think that very much shows our humanity.
Yes, he knows it.
Yeah, we are not divine characters down there. No, it is problematic. And, well, I don't know, Pete, you've certainly had your struggles over the years.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself getting lost in your worry? Or?
Oh, completely. And I have those moments where it's like I'm on a spiral down, and it's so easy to pray when things are going well.
Yeah, you're right.
And
That's true.
it's so tough, like when things start sinking.
I will
It
say
is
that, you said that, it reminds me that I'm only bringing up the process because this is the most reasonable thing that happened recently. But I will say at the very end of it, that is when I prayed. That is when I thanked God for helping me do whatever I needed to do, and having any success and being able to help others deal with the pain of what we released. And I did, but in the midst of it, I forgot. I really did.
You know what it reminds me of when you said sinking, Pete? It reminds me of the time when Jesus was walking on the water. Peter's in the boat with the other disciples.
Yeah.
And Jesus, Peter said to the Lord, if it is you, there's a storm going on. If it is you, tell me to come to you. Peter's a fisherman. Peter knows that a human can't walk on water, but he sees Jesus. He focuses on the Lord, and Jesus says, come. So Peter gets out of the boat, and he's able to miraculously walk on the water until he focused on the storm. Then he began to sink, right? But then this is what I love. He was so close to Jesus at that point that he was able to say a prayer that I use often, save me, Lord, right? 3 words. It's a very valid prayer. And what did Jesus do? He was able to grab Peter and save him.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The key is to be close to the Lord. Sometimes he's got us out of the boat, and we could be out of the boat in the storm for years.
Yeah.
But he needs us there because he wants us to grow in faith and to trust him more. Save me, Lord. I'm sinking. Help me, Lord. These are good prayers. Jesus, I trust in you. Another great prayer. Even if you don't feel it, it's a great expression of love. Lord, I trust in you. My life's a mess. It feels hopeless, but hey, I trust in you.
Yeah.
And I pray that often.
Yeah.
It's not. I need to do that more. Because it is, and I think about that image of Peter, sinking, and then he gazes up, he looks up, and he sees Jesus. I don't know. I think, and he just starts to rise, and he gives it all. And I think that's what we're all called to do, is to just give God everything and to surrender. And I think I haven't done this, but I feel like if I do give him everything, then that'll be it. Like then I'll live more confidently. But it's an everyday process.
It's an everyday process. Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's what I was going to say. Several times each day it happens.
Oh, yeah.
Because he puts us, he allows us, he leads us into the storm sometimes. Sometimes we think, well, how can this happen? He loves us. And he knows that, look what happens ultimately. We're all talking about this. We have these crises in our lives. And as Christians, it might take us a while, but what do we eventually do? We turn to the Lord and say, Lord, help me. He loves us so much, he's not going to hold it against us. He'll take us any way he can get us. So, it's taken me a lot of years to realize that, but there's nothing that beats that peace. Jesus is the Prince of Peace.
I have heard that before. And, Pete sort of alluded to this when we started the podcast, but with Ash Wednesday coming up and Lent, it always seems like this is the perfect time to really focus on that. Not that you have to wait for Lent, certainly. Right, start today if this is something that worries you, if this is something that concerns you. But, that Lent is always that time when I really try, and it's designed that way. It's when I really try to refocus again on my own spirituality. And each and every Lent, I fail at it repeatedly. I always say that I'm going to pray the divine office, and I might make it one prayer in. I might make it through morning prayer and then never get back to it again. And then it'll weigh on me because I'm like, I said I was going to do that. I didn't do that. And I got to try and do that. So maybe I've just been making it too difficult for myself. I have to
Yeah.
find something like your book a little easier for me to digest.
We can trade stories afterward about how many times I failed during Lent. I failed so many times. But let's, again, St. Peter, your namesake, Pete, the guy that he was so fallible. He messed up so many times. And look, Jesus chose him to lead the church, the church that will last till the end of time. The Lord can use us. He gets it. He knows we're going to mess up. Yeah. He just wants our love. He wants us to try, and he's going to help us.
Yeah, and I think that's important to remember. Even in our own, we've I'm going to put this, we've come to a position where in culture where we don't allow people to fail.
Yeah.
And I think that is a problem. And I know professionally, I try to make sure the people I work with understand that trying new things and failing is perfectly fine.
Right.
And that failing a couple of times may be perfectly normal. And to accept that. Because, my biggest fear is the biggest problem I have with worry is its paralytic effect, that you are so afraid to try something new or to try something you failed at once before and maybe tweak it a little bit, that you won't ever do it again, and you'll stagnate.
Right.
You won't move forward. And more than anything else, even perhaps more than the negative health effects worry has on you, I do worry that people stagnate under anxiety.
Right, absolutely. And, it's something that I struggle with sometimes because, again, I'm a software guy by profession. That's what I did for so many years. And we're trained to look at all the things that could go wrong with the computer program. Here's how this user is going to use it incorrectly, so we have to code for that. And when you apply that approach to life, it can be problematic sometimes because you start to analyze and you think, oh my gosh, all these things could go wrong. But when we do that, and again, I'm not saying I don't do this because I do, what we're saying to the Lord is, you know what, Lord, this problem, I'm going to screw this up so bad that you can't fix it. Yeah. Well, that's not true because he can fix it. And that's the thing. It's better, as you said, to try. After discerning, not to be radical and irresponsible, but if you feel the Lord's calling you to do something, do it.
Yeah.
And if you mess up, he can fix it. He's done it so many times in my life. I'm still here.
Yeah, that's very true. And I do think that's, I think we have a hard time accepting. I feel like a lot of times people have a hard time accepting their own humanity.
Yeah.
Like there's this expectation, whether it's divine or Hollywood, that we think things have to be perfect all the time.
That's right.
That's not. There's nothing in life that's perfect.
No, except your friends post on Facebook.
Well,
right?
obviously,
right?
yeah,
because
exactly.
And my wife and I, we talk about this all the time. Everybody's life is perfect except ours. How can that be? But
yeah, I tell people, I was actually speaking to a school recently, and that was something I mentioned was don't believe everything you see, particularly on Instagram. Instagram's all photographs, right?
Yeah.
And people, I'm a photographer by trade. I show everybody how to pose properly and lean in so you look skinny and thin and younger. And the truth of the matter is I will make you look good, but that may not be the truth of who you are. I am a wrinkled, gray, wide, old man. And I think it's okay that I am a wrinkled, gray, wide, old man. And, I would like to be a little less wide, but the rest of it I'm perfectly fine with. I've learned to, I'm like, okay, that's good. Don't you like seeing all the grays in your beard, Pete?
I know.
You're making it.
It's who I am. It's who I am.
Right,
and
right.
I think, but the walls that you see that people have on their Instagram profiles and their Facebook, it's all curated. It's so, it's really an interesting world we live in right now where that is reality for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's creating the anxiety and depression that we're seeing, the fear of missing out, or the fear of not living the same as your friends. And really when you get together, you realize we're all the same. We all have the same insecurities, the doubts, the fears. And there's something that I'm I hate to say this, I'm worried about those, Facebook and Instagram and social media, what it's doing to a generation.
Right.
I've had it now. I got it when I was in college, Facebook, about almost 15 years ago. And when it was first coming out and what it's, I don't know. I think the effects of all of this, I think it can be good, but at the same time, it's there's such a there's such a tendency for people like myself even to look at, oh man, these people went to Florida, or
Right.
oh man, these people got a dog, just stuff like that. And it's really I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
but I think you have to balance that. I mean, I agree, and I think social media, the Instagram effect is something that you have to be aware of, and I think that's something that we educate ourselves about. But at the same time, I maybe it's because I work in the social media field, but I also I think great opportunity comes through social media. I don't mean that from a branding perspective. I mean that from there are people that I'm able to keep in touch with that if I had to rely on letters or phone calls, I would never keep in touch with them, and my relationships with them would suffer. So I do think, like with all tools in our world, that it's all about how you use them and whether you use them for good or for bad, or in most cases, but much like what were we talking about? You were saying, fear being it's neither good nor bad. It's a neutral element.
Right.
These things are all neutral elements as well that can be used for harm. But it also, I think it requires wisdom on our part to know how to do them in a way that's beneficial for ourselves. For one thing, come to think of it, Gary, do you have social media that we can send people to?
I do. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, and and everything is linked at my website, which is followingthetruth.com. All of my accounts are there. But I use social media all the time. But I'll tell you, what's really cool is there are so many people on Facebook that my family and I pray for.
Yeah.
Who were sick and were asking for prayers. When I was in the ER a few years ago with kidney stones, which was a brutal experience, but my wife sent out the alert, please pray. I didn't know what was wrong with me at the time. I had all kinds of people around the country praying for me. So as you said, Mike, there are so many good uses of social media.
It's a powerful tool that, like anything else, can be mishandled, and requires us to, much like worry, get a handle on and know what's real versus what's perceived. Because that tends to be I know for a fact that my worry stems from the anticipation of the worst, even though that may be the 1% chance of something happening, but I'm going to be the thing that worries about it. I remember I've had 2 panic attacks in my life. One completely surprised me because I didn't know I suffered from panic attacks.
Wow.
And that happened the first day of my senior year of college. And then the other one was about a month before my son was born, and middle of the night, and I'm just in bed, and my heart, it feels like a heart attack.
Exactly.
And I figured it out. I talked to people the next day, and they helped me come to realization. Oh, you had another panic attack. I was like, oh my God, that's what that was.
Yeah. Gosh.
But that was the thing, is once I came to grips with it, once I understood that what I was going through, I was able to breathe again and settle down, and hopefully 10 years in now, a little over 10 years in now, I haven't turned into the horrible father that I was afraid I would. So let's hope for the best. Awesome. But he seems to be a good kid, so I think me and the wife are doing a pretty good job. But it is, and like anything else that affects us mentally, sometimes it does take a moment to just breathe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did want to touch on one thing that while we were speaking, I want to make sure I mentioned this. Talking about messing up, a lot of people are worried about sins they may have committed in the past. Why did I ever do that? And you guys earlier were talking about the sacrament of confession. What a great sacrament! What a great opportunity to get that weight off of your back. To go, and the Lord's going to forgive you. He's going to forgive you. Plus, He'll give you the grace to deal with that sin, so you're going to be less likely to commit it in the future, which is a really great thing. And when it comes to messing up, especially when it comes to sin, I have this tendency to get a little cocky sometimes. Yeah. And I think that there's some sins that are so far in my past. Oh, I remember when I used to do that. I'm glad I don't do that anymore. And you know what generally happens right after that? I fall on my face. And the Lord allows that because He wants us to remember that it's only through His grace that we're able to live holy lives. We can't do it on our own. Yeah. But we start to think, oh, this is I got this down. I'm never going to do that again. And we do it.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that, because I will never get a tattoo, but the only tattoo I ever even consider getting is either the Proverbs verse or the paraphrased verse of "Pride goeth before the fall."
Wow!
Because every single time that I screw up, I can attribute it to pridefulness, and so I really should need that. At least get that painted on all my walls. Maybe I'll put it in the vault. Maybe it'd be a good spot in the vault. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
So you can read it all the time and say, "Pride goeth before the fall." Right, Pete? So you won't insult me anymore on the podcast.
No, of course not.
So cruel. The irony of you getting to be here when he took 3 digs at me is it's usually the other way around.
Is it? Okay.
108 episodes in now, and I spend most of my time bedeviling Pete. But this time he got a chance to take 3 shots in my direction.
Yeah, I figured it out after 108 episodes.
Yeah, it's okay.
So, watch out, Mike.
I'm
Gunning for
shaking
you.
in my boots.
Yeah. Well, Gary, as a fellow writer,
Yeah.
I'm curious about your process. What is your creative process like?
It's very interesting when I hear you refer to me as a writer because I have zero journalism training in my life, which is kind of amazing that the Lord can use.
Mm-hmm.
He inspired me to want to write all of a sudden. But yeah, typically I remember that it's only through the Holy Spirit's guidance that I'm able to write anything. So my process is, my actual process is I have deadlines, so I force myself to write, and then eventually certain days I'll realize, you know what, this is all me. It's not, Lord, you're not giving it to me, so I'll have to take a break, which I don't like to do, and then come back the next day or spend a little time in prayer, and it'll flow. But it pretty much, I go with what the Holy Spirit inspires me to write, and I can't force it. You know, that's why people have asked, am I writing another book? Well, I don't have one right now. I didn't expect to write this one. So I really, really depend on the guidance of the Holy Spirit to lead me.
You know, I wrote more back in the day. Now I write mostly press releases and little social media posts, but I wrote articles and long articles back in the day. And I have often thought about writing a book, and I will say that it is the thing that I think scares me more than anything else. Like just A, putting that idea together, and
Right.
B, actually sitting down and doing it. Although every great writer I've ever heard from gave the exact same response you did, that, you know, if you don't get it one day, you'll have it the next day.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just keep going at it. So, but Pete, one day we do expect a book from you. So, you know.
Well, I
and then
Awesome.
you can't cheat just by putting together your previously published stuff. It's got to be new material.
New material. I cannot talk about my screenplay on Backyard Wrestling.
Oh God, I'm afraid.
Backyard Heroes. Nobody. That name's
Don't say it on the
copyrighted by me.
podcast. People will take it.
No, that is my name.
Oh, that doesn't count. This doesn't count as a trademark option, so you've lost it, sir. Sorry.
Well, don't.
Though I'm willing to bet you are not the first person to consider a manuscript about backyard wrestling.
No. Well, my friends used to do that back in the day. We had our own.
I
it's kind of.
totally believe that.
But yeah. I mean, hopefully one day. That's the thing. I try to write at least a little bit every day, even if it's just journaling.
Right. And I do that as well. I do journal a lot. Yeah, but and that does help.
And how does inspiration come for what your next book? Do you have an idea for the next book?
At the moment, no, but generally it does come to me. It comes through really the circumstances of my life. Something will happen, and I'll think, this might work. And then if typically what you do is put a proposal together, so you have to have all the chapters and the concept and give a couple sample chapters. So if I get that, if that gels in my mind, then I go with it and present it to a publisher. And that's pretty much the way all of these books have been written. Again, I'm amazed that the Lord has used me to write these books, but if he wants me to write another one, I will.
Oh, I am certain that there's another book in your future. I have no doubt about that. Once you get this far into it, you're
you're right.
You're going to write more.
I'm sure I will.
Something because the thing is, our lives change so much as we move along.
Exactly.
So 5 years from now, you'll be in a different place, and you'll be like,
Exactly.
you know what? I think other people could benefit from this too. And since you have the capacity, unlike Pete and I, to know how to actually write a book, that puts you in the driver's seat.
Yeah,
So
and you're right. I do want to make an impression because I know people are reading the books. I know it's going to help them, and the way I look at it, the books are going to outlive me. So, I read a lot of books from people who are not living anymore, and I think, wow, good thing they wrote this down.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's my motivation.
For me, they'll just be able to look back at my tweets. That's all. It's like, I hear they're stored at the Library of Congress, so go check out Mike Walsh PR.
There you go.
Anyway, I think we got to wrap up. But Gary, thank you very much for joining us today. Oh, wait.
Where can you find the book, Gary?
It's
Where can we find the
available
book?
from Ave Maria Press, AveMariaPress.com. You can get it from Amazon, from Barnes & Noble online. You can also go right to my website, FollowingTheTruth.com, and I have a link to it right from the website.
Okay, it's called Give Up Worry for Lent, 40 Days to Finding Peace and Christ. Gary, thank you so much again. Thanks, Mike.
My pleasure.
You got it. Thank you both.